Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to Wishwell Farms. Any moment, I'm going to have a semi pulled into my driveway with another load of farm supplies. As soon as I get him unloaded, I want to take you out into one of the greenhouses to show you a few of the things I'm working on to get ready for the quickly approaching hydroponic greenhouse tomato growing season. It's a tight squeeze. Yeah, you definitely got a full load today. My goodness. Oh, that feels a little better. It is a bit brisk out there today. So the greenhouse I'm currently in is our tall house, because as you can see, if you look up there, it is 18 feet tall. It has a ridge vent on top. It is by far our tallest greenhouse. Other than that, it's a standard size. It's 30 feet wide by 96 feet long, and it's our greenhouse number 1, but we just call it our tall house. So as you can see in here, we have Dutch Beto buckets with perlite in them. And we dump our buckets every other year. This is going to be season 2 with these buckets. So the rock wool cubes were thrown out last fall. They were ripped out of these buckets and thrown out. And we were left with about 2/3 of a bucket full of 1-year-old perlite. Ideally, it is recommended to use new perlite every year, but it's expensive and it's time consuming to take all of these buckets out the back door and dump them in the field and then spread it all around. It's actually a good soil amendment, so there's nothing wrong with dumping used perlite in the field. You don't have to dispose of it. But this year, it's going to be year number 2. I'm going to top these all off with fresh perlite, and then they will be ready for planting number 1, which is only 3 weeks away. It's coming quickly. The tomatoes are about 5 inches tall right now. It seems like they're never going to really start taking off. It has been so cold, gloomy, and cloudy for, it seems like, weeks on end. But, you know, every now and then we'll get a day of sun, but we need days and days and days of sunshine back to back to back to get these plants to grow, because my main problem is the cold ground. Even though the air temperature in my greenhouse where my plants are is at a minimum of 64, about 66 during the day, without sunlight, it's never going to get warmer than that. And at the root level, even though I have the plants up off the ground, they get down in the mid-50s at night, and that is far too cold for tomatoes. We want to keep our tomatoes above 62 to 64 degrees, otherwise phosphorus will be locked out of being able to be taken up by the plant, because it needs to be above 62 to 64 degrees. Without phosphorus moving through the plant properly, they'll show that as purpling on the undersides of the leaves. So they are not looking the hottest right now. I will take you up there to show you probably in the next video how they're growing and some of the things we're doing to prepare them to be ready to be brought out here. So today I'm just going to be bringing bags of perlite in here and lining them up along these posts. And it's only going to take probably 2 or 3 bags to fill a row, just because they're already 2/3 of the way full. Normally it takes 1 bag to fill about 12 buckets with perlite, but you know, since they're pretty full already, 2 or 3 bags is all it's going to take to complete 1 row. And then the other job that I need to start working on is disposing of these old used up tomato hooks. So these tomato hooks here, it may look like they have plenty of extra string on there to you, but they don't. If I unwound this, it would only be like 10 feet. So I'm going to bring a wheelbarrow down through here and pull off all the ones that have had 2 seasons on them already, let me show you one that has just one season. So this one here has had one season of growth, and it still has one season left. Now these tomato hooks are made to normally only get one growing season of 10 or 11 months. But since our growing season is a little bit shorter, April through August or September, I'm able to get 2 seasons out of them. I believe they have 9 meters of string on them. They come out of Canada, so they go by meters. 9 meters of string wrapped around the spool or the hook, and 3 meters of drop string, which is about 9 feet. So I'm only 7.5, 8 feet, so I always have a little extra string that I have to cut off the bottom when I pull that drop string off. So you can see here, I got quite a few that just need thrown in the dumpster. I don't rewind string on them. That would take me all winter. It's a big, big hassle, pain in the butt, very time consuming. It's easier just to buy new ones, hang them up here after disposing of the old ones. So as I'm walking down through here, I can tell everything on this side to my left needs replaced. There might be a few random ones here and there that have another season on them. All of these were hung up here new last year, so they have one more season left on them. So just got to dispose of 3 rows, and we got 2 rows that are good to go for this season. So as I'm looking around the greenhouse, I'm trying to think of questions that some of you may have of things you see out here that maybe you don't understand or know what it is. So I'm looking up here at this cover. Let me show you real close. You see, there's some water sitting in it. See this cover up here? That cover is old greenhouse plastic that I can pull over to that purlin. And it kind of creates a false ceiling, a lower false ceiling. And I can do it on this side too. I have it all scrunched up right now, but I can pull that all the way over. I've just never taken that down. That has been up there for probably 6 or 7 or 8 years, because I used to start my tomatoes a little earlier. And we would have so much cold weather that I wanted to conserve our heat. And since this is a tall greenhouse, there's a lot of space, a lot more space to heat than there is in some of the other standard or more traditional looking Quonset shaped greenhouses. So every night I would pull that cover over to try to create a more normal, 12 feet maybe, height of greenhouse, and hopefully have to heat a little bit less. Yes, the heat's still going up through it because it's only 1 layer thick with no insulation of air between 2 layers like the rest of the poly on the roof of the greenhouse. But I think it helped a little bit. But I don't really do that anymore. It's probably been 3 years since I pulled that over. It's just something that's blocking the sunlight now and probably needs removed and thrown out. This is called a convection tube, and it serves several purposes. The first purpose it serves is to distribute the heat. So there's a heater and there's a heater, and they blow into this kind of a box, I don't know what you call it, and the convection tube there's a fan up there. This will fill up with air, and that will distribute the heat throughout the greenhouse. And it has holes punched in it every 2 feet, 3-inch holes, and that blows the hot air down into the crop canopy and just does a really good job at distributing the heat evenly throughout the entire greenhouse. The other purpose it serves is to bring in fresh air from outdoors. So if you look up here, there's a set of louvers right there. Those louvers were open, and it's all set on a timer through the computer, and it all depends on how humid it is. It reads the humidity and knows whether or not it needs to open or not, and it opens for a certain amount of time to bring in fresh air, while an exhaust fan in the back is removing the humid air. And then that fresh air is distributed just like the heat is when the heaters are running. If it's really humid, the heaters can also run as it's bringing in the fresh air. So it will dry the air out. It'll be bringing dry hot air down through here instead of just fresh air from outside, because it could be humid outside as well when it's trying to take the humid air out of here. So yeah, it serves several purposes. This greenhouse is really good at controlling the environment and making it really good for growing tomatoes. Another thing about this greenhouse that I really like that's different than all my other ones is it has automated sides. I don't know what you call that. It's almost like an accordion. See how these vents are full of air? there's two different cooling stages here. So when the greenhouse gets hot, this ridge vent up on top, it will deflate and let the hot, humid air float out the top, and then it will close back up. And this, stage 1, the bottom half will deflate and it'll drop about a foot. And when it's calling for stage 2 cooling, the top will also deflate and the whole thing will eventually lay flat down there near the bottom, and you'll have 3 feet of fresh air coming through the greenhouse on both sides to help cool things off and kind of dry it out if it's humid. So that's just a quick rundown of this greenhouse. I'm gonna get busy dumping some perlite and removing some of these old tomato hooks. And then sometime next week, I'll bring in the new tomato hooks. That's something that's not really needed to be done right away, because until the tomatoes are needing strung up, which is several weeks from now, shoot, probably 5 weeks from now, I don't need to pull the strings down. But it is nice to have those up there and ready to go, so I don't have to mess with that when we're busy doing other things outdoors and around the barns and the farm. Well, while I'm at it, talking about everything in this greenhouse, I'm gonna go ahead and show you a few of the other things that I'm gonna have to unwinterize to be ready for bringing my tomatoes out here. It's not as easy as just turning on the heaters and bringing plants out here and planting them. There's a lot of prep work that has to take place beforehand. One of the easiest things to do is to fill the water heater up. Here's our source water coming in from our well. We're going to have 3 other tanks here, 2 for fertilizer, 1 for bringing the pH down. And this is our mixing tank and our irrigation system. We have 4 zones run on billow pumps, and each zone has a solenoid valve. That way that it can't all be running at the same time. It's got a filter for the source water and a filter for the outgoing feed water. This is a flow valve or a flow switch, so I make sure I have it adjusted properly to bring in the amount of gallons per minute I need, so the billow pumps are proportioning the right amount of fertilizer and sulfuric acid into the mixing tank. Then we got our boiler here. This is for our radiant floor heat. It's obviously all drained for winter. I'll have to reconnect all the bolts down there on the pump, fill it back up with water, get that thing fired up. And here are the black water lines for the radiant floor heat that will heat the tomato roots or the tomato plant at the root level. Keep these buckets at 70 degrees or warmer at all times. Normally for radiant floor heat, all these black tubes are equally spaced across the entire greenhouse floor, but we have concentrated ours to be directly under the tomato buckets because that's the only place that I'm concerned about keeping heated. I don't worry about this floor. When the sun's out, it'll be plenty warm on its own, and it doesn't need to be warm for the tomatoes. So once I get all the water turned back on in here and I'm heating it and not having to worry about anything freezing out here, I'll start pumping some water and some disinfectant through these lines just to make sure there's no buildup of fertilizers and debris in these little woodpecker drippers. I usually have to replace probably 10 to 15 on every line, so we got 5 lines in here. So I'll pressurize everything, and if there's no water coming out of the dripper, sometimes there could just be roots plugging it up, and I'll give it a good smack to try to get it flowing. And if it still doesn't flow, sometimes there's junk in the line, but I'll pull it off at the dripper and determine if it's the line that's plugged or if it's the dripper that's plugged. And then we'll get all that working, and then we will be ready to bring out our plants. These bags of perlite used to cost like $9, and now I think they're 14, something like that. Not cheap. I think I'm just gonna bring in like 2 per row. So we'll start off with 10, see how far that gets us, and then I'll know if I need to bring in more or put the rest of the stack away in the barn for the next greenhouse. All right, I'm just gonna start right here on row 1 and see how far a bag gets me. Some of these don't need much at all, but I'm really topping them off all the way to the top. You know, last year I didn't quite fill them all the way to the top, knowing that I was going to be using them for 2 years. That way there'd be more room to put some fresh on top. Yeah, one bag's gonna go quite a ways. So I'm just making sure I fill these up. So all the old perlite. Is it perlite? It's not perlite, it's perlite, I think. Now some of them are missing, you know, almost half their perlite because the cubes, when we ripped them out, had a big root mass attached to a lot of the perlite and it got thrown out with the roots. I forgot how dusty this stuff is. It'll be like a cloud of white dust in here, especially if you have 2 or 3 people doing this at the same time. So normally I'll drop the sides down to get fresh air in here, or at least turn the exhaust fan on and open the louvers up to bring fresh air in here and suck out the dust. Sometimes I'll even put a mask on, which is probably what I'm gonna have to do today because it's so cold out. My fingers and toes are cold already, that I don't really wanna drop the sides because it's probably 7 or 10 degrees colder outside than it is in here. I was hoping to wait to do this on a sunny day because when the sun's out, even though there can be snow outside, it'll feel like a tropical environment in here and be like 75, 80 degrees, which is really nice working weather if you ask me in the dead of winter. But tomorrow's weather is even worse than today's. I think it's gonna start out at 15 degrees and windy and cloudy, so it's gonna be miserable out here. So I figured I might as well get a start on it today while it's close to 30. I think it's actually 37 degrees in here. 36, so yeah, 36, that's not too bad. Now I'm trying not to spill this stuff all over the floor just because it makes a big mess. If you're wondering why this bucket is propped up on blocks above this, what do you call these? Like a drywall, mud container for doing drywall. That is my catch for my leachate. So one bucket I will not allow to let its leachate flow out like the rest of them. I catch it, that way I can check it daily and monitor. Oh, there's that dust. I can monitor what the plants are not using, and I can adjust my feed appropriately. Now, when I was telling you that ideally you'd want to replace this every year, there's several reasons for that too. Oh man, it's dust. First of all, there could be insects overwintering in that old perlite, like thrips. I always have a big thrip problem in here. And the main reason for that is because I don't have concrete floors, so there's always going to be some debris ground into the ground, the sand and gravel I have in here, in the corners, you know, under some of these black pieces of row cover. And thrip eggs, I don't think they overwinter as larvae, but the eggs can overwinter, and as soon as it gets warm, they'll hatch and the whole life cycle begins again. The other reason is for salt buildup that will be in these buckets. So I will flush them really good with fresh pH corrected water before we transplant. That way if there's salt buildup of any kind, like fertilizer residues from last year, I can try to flush those all out. That way the plants have a good clean start with basically fresh perlite. There's gonna always be some of last year's roots mixed in there, but I've never had a problem doing it this way yet, and I'll probably continue doing it just because of the amount of time and money it saves, and I always get a good crop even on the second year of doing reusing the perlite. And I've even heard of a grower down in Mississippi. I went to a conference one year. He would use it over and over and over. I mean, the perlite is good forever. It's never going to go bad. It's just what's in or around the perlite that can cause problems. So he was running hot water. He was bringing a hot water pressure washer of some kind in here and just flooding the buckets with almost boiling hot water to kill any pathogens that could be in that perlite. So That would be the ideal way for me to do it. I just haven't done it that way before. All right, I'm not gonna bore you any longer with talking about the Beto buckets and perlite. I'll put it on time lapse while I finish filling the rest of these buckets, but I will bring you back when I'm ready to start taking down these old tomato hooks, because I have a few more things I want to discuss about those. All right, that only took 8.5 bags. That wasn't bad at all. And I went ahead and calculated what I normally go through. It's usually about 26 bags, so decent savings there. Now we're gonna start pulling down these tomato hooks. And before I start though, I wanted to show you something. So, you know, I saw one like this and I thought, man, I wonder if that's enough string for one more season. And it was this one here. I unwound it to show you. There's 8 foot of drop string ready to clip to the plants. So the plants will be in the buckets. They'll be about whatever, 14, 15 inches tall when we transplant them. And, you know, pretty quickly, they'll start falling over. We will have a bamboo stake in each one, hold them up until we clip the string to the plant. And then each week, we'll put a new clip as the plant grows up the string to clip it to the string. So if you're wondering what happens when the plant gets 7 feet tall and is here at the hook, we take the hook off, we drop it 1 turn, half turn, or a full turn, just depends on how fast the plants are growing. But you know, I just dropped it 1 turn right there, and that gave me, I think it's about 8 or 9 inches more of string. So that will lower the top of the plant down to here, and then we slide this string into the next position over. So the plants will all be leaning. I'll be showing you guys all of this process as the plants are growing during March. A lot of the March videos are going to be about hydroponic tomatoes. So back to what I was talking about. If you look on here, there's only a few more turns of string and the hook will be out, empty. At that point, it's useless. So because my string is that short, I have to throw this out. I'm sure there's machines out there that can rewind these with spools of string. Obviously there is, because they're making these. But I don't have one, and it's fairly inexpensive to just hang new ones. So these plants will be every bit as tall as this greenhouse is by the end of the growing season, by end of August. Probably close to 20 feet long. So as you saw on that spool I just threw out, that hook, there was probably only a couple feet left on it. So I would have ran out a month into the growing season. So that's why we have to put new spools on every other year that have enough string to lower those plants probably 20 or 30 times. I mean, it's done every week from probably mid-March all the way through August until we cut the tops off and get ready to terminate them. All right, I'm going to start working on pulling these all down and getting them out of the way. Moving on down the row. Some of these have enough string on them, you know, to get me through a month, but unfortunately it creates more work for me in the long run. So better to take care of them now, because I don't want to have to mess with this in the middle of the season when we're out in the fields hot and heavy into planting and harvesting other vegetables. I was just outside putting my forklift away and the partial skid of perlite, and it was sleeting, misting, almost like a light drizzle. And there was ice all over my forklift and all over the bags of perlite. I couldn't believe it. You know, I guess I feel really fortunate that I don't have to go out and work in this weather. There's always work to do on the farm, whether it's outdoors or in my office. And this is tax season. I'm actually doing my taxes tomorrow. Fortunately, all that is done and ready to go. So I just feel blessed that I can come out into a greenhouse, even though it's cold, at least I'm out of the elements and I can get some stuff done. But to be honest with you, greenhouses are kind of a thorn in my side. I know I shouldn't complain about them, but you know, I've been doing this for over 20 years now, and there are times that I regret getting into greenhouse production. Just so much that comes with it. And probably the one thing that I hate the most is replacing the poly. Every year we got to replace the poly on one of our greenhouses because we have 5 of them. It's good for 5, 6, 7 years. They say 4 to 5. You know, you start losing light transmission through the poly after 4 or 5 years, you know, and then it starts increasing like almost 10% every year. So if you try to go 10 years on your poly, you're not getting the light transmission that you should be getting. Plus you start running the risk of it getting torn very easily in a windstorm just because it's starting to degrade a little bit. So yeah, it's expensive, time consuming, and not a very fun job fighting the wind. Fortunately, this side is done. This side of the greenhouse has not been done, so this one's going to be done sometime this spring. All right, I'm going to finish taking down these old strings, and I got one little surprise to show you here at the end of the video, so stay tuned. All right, this is what I wanted to show you guys. This is greenhouse tomato seeding number 2. They're looking really nice. These are our LED lights. I currently have them about 9 inches above the crop. 69 degrees down here. It was 70 earlier, so that's not bad. And I keep these little thermometers in the rock wool, 70 degrees. So if you are new to our channel, this is where we start our first 2 of 6 greenhouse tomato plantings. I have germination mats under here, and if you're wondering what this metal rack is, this is just an old rack from one of our old sales greenhouses, our retail sales greenhouses. It keeps the flats up off of the germination mat so the roots will air prune and stay within the rock wool and not grow through the flat and sprawl all over the germination mat. And you can see I have a piece of Reflectix up on top here. It does get a little chilly in the basement, so I'm trying to keep as much heat in here as I can. If you're interested in learning more about our hydroponic greenhouse seedling production, check out the playlist down below in the description box. I've already done videos on our seed selection, seeding, how I water and fertilize down here, and how we transplant into the next size rock wool cubes out into our starter greenhouse. And I have another video about our LED lights and some other things like that. So check out that playlist in the description. So I just want to give you guys a quick look at the greenhouse planting number 2. Really happy with the germination rate. They look really good. This is the only one that maybe didn't come up the best. Looks like maybe it's only about a 60 or 70%, but the other ones look excellent. This is where we're going to wrap up today's video, folks. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and I'll see y'all again real soon down on the farm.